Good morning and welcome to our first webinar of 2023. And to kickstart the new year, we're going to be discussing how reward and recognition can lead to a high-performing and engaged workforce, which in turn leads to a high-performing business. And I wanted to say Happy New Year to everyone and welcome to those who are new to our webinars, but also for those of you who regularly join them. It's good to have you back, and we'll be continuing with our webinars throughout 2023 and we'll be sharing details of our schedule at the end. So with that in mind, we're going to then just run through some introductions just so to make you aware of who we all are. So I'm Victoria Templeton, one of the HR Knowledge Managers here at HR Solutions. I'll be leading today's webinar and I'm joined by my colleague Abby Ashford. Abby's our lead HR consultant. She manages our team of consultants as well as continuing to support her own client base. So Abby will be supporting me in the polls and the questions at the end, so she'll be able to bring her operational experiences to help bring your questions to life and share her thoughts at the end. We're also joined by our colleague Drew, who will be here to support us from a technical perspective. Hopefully we shouldn't experience any technical issues, but if you do experience any, and if you are able to, then just drop us a note in the question panel. And we do have many of you here who have joined us today, and so we've all placed you on mute, but obviously we do like to hear your questions as we do on our webinar. So when you see this slide, this means we're at the end of the webinar and ready to take those live questions. Here's just a quick run through of how you can submit those. So on the screen now, you'll see an image of what your GoToWebinar panel screen looks like. So just simply type your question into the question pane. And as I say, we'll aim to read out and answer as many as we can at the end. And we're also going to be running our polls as usual. So when you see this slide, it means that's the point where we're going to be running a confidential poll. Please, we look forward to you participating in those. If you do wish to participate, then just make sure you're not in the full screen mode, because for whatever reason, it doesn't work on GoToWebinar in that mode. So I'm just going to run through then what we'll cover in this morning's webinar, and I'll start off by talking a little theory about reward and recognition. So those of you that have done your CIPD or are in the process of doing it, you'll probably hear some familiar things there. And then I'm going to be looking at how when you focus on reward and recognition, it actually can make good business sense. So I'll just run through the correlation between the two. And then once we've done that, we're going to look at how you can approach introducing a reward and recognition strategy to help build that high-performing business. And then we'll finish, as I said, by taking questions at the end. And we've got a few closing slides as well that just provides further information on how you can access further support. So before we get going, we're going to run 3 quick polls. So if we go to the first one, I just need to launch it. And I'd just like to know, out of interest, again, all these polls are confidential. So what would you say has been your most significant challenge of 2022? Has it been the ability to recruit? Has it been challenges in retaining your staff, maintaining employee engagement, or the cost of living? So let us know your thoughts. Keep it open for a few more seconds. Wait for a few more votes to come in. Okay, let's close the poll, and I'm going to share the results, Abby, so we can take a look to see what has come up. So 39% of you have found the ability to recruit to be a challenge. 42% is about retaining staff. 31% employee engagement, and 31% as well cost of living. So I don't know about you, Abby, but that doesn't really come as too much of a surprise, does it to you?
No, it doesn't. I imagine most people would want to tick every box, and
Yes.
probably the same for this year as well, for sure.
Yeah. So hopefully going through today's webinar, we'll see how reward and recognition can help combat those challenges that you've highlighted there. So let's go on to a second poll. And this is about understanding whether you already have a reward and recognition strategy in place. Now, it could be a standalone one, or it could be part of your overall people plan. So I'll wait for a few more votes. Okay, now close the poll and get those results shared. So Abby, we've got 32% of attendees do, which is great. 68% of you don't. So I don't know if that's a surprise or not, but hopefully by going through the webinar, you'll pick some things up today to sort of get you thinking about actually how could a reward and recognition strategy actually help, and give you some pointers as to how to go about doing it. I don't know if you've got any thoughts, Abby?
Yeah, I think it's quite high actually, the amount that haven't, and it might be that it just hasn't been labelled or branded as a strategy for this year. There might be lots of sort of loose elements coming together, such as what are we going to do for bonus this year, what are we going to do for pay rise, and then all the other elements of reward that come in. So yeah, I think as we go through the webinar, actually people might be surprised how much is already planned for, and it'd be quite nice to sort of package that up and say this is our reward and recognition strategy.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, thank you. So one final poll and then I promise we'll get going. And this is around when did you last review your reward and recognition initiatives? So has it been in the last year, between 1 and 3 years ago, or was it pre-pandemic? There some interesting results coming through. We'll just wait a few more moments and then I'll close it. Okay, so let's close the poll and share. So 42% of you have reviewed what you currently offer in the last year, 31% between 1 and 3 years, so during the pandemic, which I can kind of get, and then 28% pre-pandemic. So actually, quite a lot of focus then actually over the last couple of years then has been made towards looking at review and recognition. So that's actually really good, given that we've also had to juggle business operations with managing a pandemic and rebuilding after that. So actually that's quite high percentages, I would say. Don't know about you, Abby?
Yeah, it is, and I think it reflects the fact that pre-pandemic, the recruitment market was so very different, and then during and just after pandemic, we've got such a focus on flexible working and the sort of the benefits of having different working patterns, working from home, that sort of thing. And now it's very much attraction and retention is such a hot topic that links into reward and recognition, which I'm sure you'll be going through.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that, and thank you for your contributions. So let's hide that, and I'm going to move on to the webinar. So, as I said, we'll just be spending a few minutes just understanding what we mean by reward and recognition and linking it to some theories out there. So, if we think about employee reward, then we need to think about it broadly, because it's not just about financial elements, provisions you provide your workforce, but it's also including non-financial elements. And it's about designing your pay policies that can reward in line with your organisational culture and context, as well as your company values and beliefs. But it also needs to be relevant to the external market as well. And all of that combined ultimately will help give your employees that job satisfaction and motivation, which I will come on to explain why in a few moments. So reward is linked very much closely to employee motivation, and reward doesn't just have to be financial. As you can see on this slide here, there's both financial and non-financial elements of reward and benefits that can be given. And, you know, some individuals just see their reward as being their basic pay, but actually, if you think about their total remuneration, it encompasses many, many different things. And when we're dealing in a chat with challenges such as the ability to recruit, retain, then reminding employees is so important about actually, ultimately, the overall package is this. It's not just your basic pay. And so these are some examples just to illustrate both financial and non-financial elements of employee reward. And if we then think about employee recognition, that's about how obviously an employer shows its appreciation to the workforce and acknowledging people for the contribution they provide at work. And it could be for their day-to-day tasks that they do on an individual basis, or work that they've achieved as part of a team, or it could be recognition in respect of the behaviours that individuals demonstrate whilst doing their work, or in the way in which they do things. So recognition can be about efforts and appreciation, not just of an individual, but it can also be team-based as well. And those sincere acts can boost morale and provide that sense of belonging at work, as we're going to come on shortly to understand a little bit more about. And again, like we did with the reward for recognition, here are some examples to illustrate just different ways in which you can recognise your employees, you know, from your informal mechanisms such as your shout outs, your just say thank yous, to the more formal areas of recognition where you have perhaps celebratory lunches that take place annually or every 6 months, some service recognition awards, etc. So there's many, many different ways, and it's not all just internal either. If you notice on there that employers also can utilise social media to recognise and sell the skills and capabilities of and the brilliant performance of their employees through social media. And so these are all really important to have a variety of different ways in which you recognise people, and that leads me nicely on to how can all of these reward and recognition initiatives help with employee motivation, engagement, job satisfaction. Well, I mentioned at the start that for those of you that may have done your CIPD or are in the process of doing it, if I said Maslow hierarchy of needs, you'll all sort of hopefully remember that. And even if you're not in the operating HR and CIPD, then you may have heard of it as well. So Maslow hierarchy of needs. So Maslow believed that people's actions are ultimately motivated by both physiological and psychological needs. And so these range from the most very basic to the very complex of human needs that somebody needs to feel fulfilled and satisfied and have that job satisfaction. And so if those needs are met, Maslow argues that it leads to a direct impact on job satisfaction and motivation. And we know from research that it's been proven that where there's high job satisfaction and motivation levels in workplaces, then it leads to higher performance, both of the individual and then ultimately by the performance, and you then get that high performing workplace. So if we start looking through the hierarchy of needs, it starts at the very bottom with the physiological needs, and then that moves on, and I will come on to explain a little bit more about how these relate to reward and recognition, or how reward and recognition can relate into this. Then the next level up the hierarchy is around an individual's safety needs. Then it's about the need for love and belonging within a workplace, having esteem needs met, and then ultimately the most complex is around that self-actualization. So that's the hierarchy that Maslow identified for creating a highly engaged and motivated workforce. So now if we think about the hierarchy in the context of reward and recognition, understanding this enables you to target your reward and recognition strategy so that you can directly link it to gaining higher employee engagement, greater job satisfaction, and ultimately have that positive impact on the business and driving that high performance. So if we start at the very bottom, the physiological. Now, the physiological need, that's about, I guess, the most basic of human survival needs. And for example, if we think in the context of reward, it's ensuring that that job that you're giving that employee not only provides the individual with that steady income, but it's giving them enough money to live. It's the absolute basic survival needs. So somebody needs to come to work to earn money to be able to financially support themselves and their family. But of course, the biggest challenge at the moment, as we've seen on that poll, and it goes without saying, is the cost of living crisis. So for employers, pay reviews are not something that obviously are automatic every year. It's going to be always driven by affordability. But from the employee's perspective, this year more than ever, they're going to be looking to seek higher pay, because naturally the inflation levels increasing to around 11%. That's meaning that people aren't able to survive on the levels of which perhaps they were used to. So this is going to be a massive challenge for employers in terms of what can they do to help support employees in the cost of living, help retain employees, prevent them from looking elsewhere where there is higher paid jobs, and what can they do to fulfill that physiological need. So for example, it might be, instead of having some form of pay rise, it could be a one-off bonus, for example. So that's how pay reward comes into play at the most basic of survival human needs in the hierarchy here. You then have the next step up the hierarchy, which is about safety needs, and that's about creating a work environment that's emotionally safe and secure. So again, in the context of reward and recognition, it's about thinking about how you can offer that reward package that doesn't just contain financial elements, but it's the non-financial elements too. So it may be that if you don't currently offer an employee assistance program, you may look to introduce one, or you might wish to open up access to occupational health or offering private medical schemes to your employees as part of their total reward package. You know, they're just some examples of how reward and benefits can actually help fulfill that Maslow need of feeling, you know, the safety needs within their workplace. It could also include access to mental health first aiders, perhaps having wellbeing ambassadors. You know, not all employers offer these. So if you've got a potential candidate and you do offer these, and the candidate is looking at other jobs as well where those organisations don't offer those, then that could be an attraction, a selling point to you, because you're telling them that you're focusing on their safety needs, their emotional and well-being needs. So it can be a huge attraction. But also, of course, it can include providing job security. I know no one can provide 100% security to say, absolutely, we're not going to ever make redundancies. That's just not possible. But if, for example, traditionally people have been operating using 0 hours contracts, you know, it could be actually instead moving to a world where you offer part-time permanent contracts. You know, so it's thinking about how you can home in on the safety needs for your employees through your reward and recognition initiatives. And so the next level up is about love and belonging. And this is where the employee recognition can play an important role in motivation and job satisfaction. So it's about having policies and processes in place that recognise excellent performance, excellent behaviours and contribution, not just individual level, but also team level. And of course, reward can equally play an important part in how you fulfil this need for your employees. So recognition could be peer-to-peer, or the recognition could come from the line managers or senior leadership and executive teams, or even customer feedback. It was always worthwhile having feedback and recognition from a variety of sources. And again, like I said earlier, feedback recognition can be shared externally via social media or internally via your intranet or in-house awards. And from a reward perspective, then it's also about ensuring your employees feel like they're being paid their worth, so in line with their skills, their capabilities, and their market worth as well. And then as you move up the hierarchy, the needs become more complex, and now we're moving on to the level that deals with fulfilling somebody's esteem needs. And that's about having policies in place that help employees to feel they're contributing to that higher goal, that their performance is important, that they're all part of a successful business, and therefore their contribution is also recognised. And that's where you can use tools such as incentive schemes, bonus schemes, to help drive that that performance, and where employees can see the results of their performance, you know, by having you know, bonus payments, incentive schemes. And finally, at the most highest is the self-actualization, and this is about how you find ways through reward and recognition to maximize your employees' potential. So it's, you know, how fulfilled are your employees in their employment? So can you consider policies and procedures that focus on skill and career development, you know, rewarding that exceptional talent? Perhaps you might want to think about succession planning, having that clear career path for development, or proactively encouraging internal development from within rather than recruiting externally. There are many, many ways in which you can help fulfill the need for self-actualization and home in on the skills and maximize every employee's potentials too. So that's a run through of the Maslow hierarchy of needs and how actually it does very much relate into reward and recognition. So hopefully you found that helpful, just to set the context and to get you thinking. I'm going to now run a quick poll, and it's going to be around pay rises. Now this is obviously a very topical subject at the moment, and as I said, these are confidential polls, but are you considering giving a pay rise to your employees this year? So I'll keep it open for a little bit longer. A few more votes and then I'll close. Okay, I'm going to close the poll and share the results with you all. So we have 85% of you saying yes, you are considering that pay rise, and 15% of you have said no. And it's a really, really difficult thing at the moment, isn't it, Abby? I don't know what you're experiencing from you know, clients and queries that are coming through.
Yeah, getting a lot of questions and a lot of people sort of exploring what are other people doing, what percentages of people doing, are doing cost of living, doing anywhere near, you know, inflation, and there's a really broad range of percentages that employers are doing if indeed they can afford to. Some, if they can't do pay rises, are doing something different, such as a one-off bonus, the same amount for everybody, or again a percentage-based bonus. So yeah, there's lots of other things apart from pay rises, but it's good to see that 85% is quite strong. Yeah,
and I've heard of I mean, the larger organisations, and I'm talking like Marks and Spencers and John Lewis, you know, they're to support employees in the cost of living. It's not just obviously the financial element, which obviously massively helps, but they're also making use of their own business to help. So for example, Marks and Spencers, I believe, were providing free hot meals to their warehouse staff, you know. So it's for employers, obviously it very depends on the business, but are there things within your business that you can perhaps help utilize amongst your employees so that they have a little bit of that stress removed, or it might be that you can provide them access to some financial advice or something. It's other things as well, and ultimately it is about pay, because people need to be able to afford the rising costs of food, petrol, etc. when inflation's at 11%. But it's not to say that other things can't also be considered. So thank you, Abby. And then I do have a further poll here. Let's hide that one and then open the next one. And this is if you are offering a pay rise, and as I said, it's confidential, this poll, which to the nearest percentage mark do you think you would be offering?
This is a really interesting one. Thank you everyone for sharing.
Yeah. And I think it must help as well with everybody hearing what the results will be, just to give them a sense of where they may be in the big scheme of things, how other people are doing it. But ultimately, it's obviously affordability, isn't it, for each and every business. But it'll be interesting to see what the current thought process is. So let's see. I'll wait for a few more moments and then I'll close the poll. Okay, so I'm going to share the results with everybody. So all of them have been answered, all the options available. So let's start with the 11% inflation. We've got 3% of you on our webinar today that are considering that pay rise to match the inflation levels, which is absolutely fantastic, isn't it? And I guess the number, i.e. 3%, probably isn't too surprising, because, you know, it is about affordability. The fact that pay rises are being offered is really, really good and welcomed, isn't it? I'm sure. Don't know if you've got any observations, comments, Abby.
Yeah, I mean, you'd expect it to be down in the lower ones, the between 1% and 5%, and it is showing that. And I think it's interesting, this snapshot, because a lot of people that come to our webinars listening in are from SMEs as opposed to your larger corporate organisations. So the fact that a few can do 6 and above is incredible. But yeah, I would have imagined 5% and below, which is what the figures show. Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. Oh, appreciate everybody sharing that. That's really interesting, and hopefully you find that interesting too. And it's good to see there's some considerations going on there for pay rises. So let's hide that. Okay, I'm going to run this poll. For those of you, because I think there may be some of you that won't be considering a pay rise, and if you're not, then would you consider the one-off bonus? As Abby says, you're getting quite a few queries, aren't you, around this as a question?
Yeah, definitely. People just they want to be able to offer something, but pitching it right. You know, you don't want to be doing a huge percentage to retain staff, motivate staff, and then have to make redundancies because then you haven't got enough money going forward. So it's a huge decision.
Okay, so let's close that down then and share the results with you all. So for those of you that can't manage the pay rise, you at least 78% of you are considering a one-off bonus and 22% of you are unable to. So I think it's interesting, because if we'd had this poll pre-pandemic, I don't think people would have thought to have, we weren't using one-off bonuses, were we, to help support people? So it's certainly a new thing to be doing. Does that figure surprise you, or?
No, it doesn't, because I think people are having to think, well, if we're not able to do a pay rise, what else can we do? We're seeing a lot of hardship allowances, aren't we? one company that I know were doing a prize draw where the first prize was somebody's heating bills being paid for a year.
Oh,
You know,
wow.
I've never heard of things like that before. It's so different at the moment. It's
Mm.
fascinating.
Yeah, it is absolutely. So thank you everybody for contributing to those polls. So let's carry on. So obviously I've gone through the theory side of it and shown how some ideas as to reward and recognition, and the links between what you offer and motivation, job satisfaction and engagement. So let's focus now on how it makes that good business sense. And so we know that offering an effective and targeted reward and recognition program can help you in attracting good talent. You know, and as we saw from the very first poll, many of you have struggled with attracting good talent as part of your recruitment challenges. You know, and also you've all shared as well with us how retaining talent has been a challenge. So starting to think about how whether you can make any slight tweaks to your reward and recognition schemes can help in combating those challenges could be worthwhile. We know that reward and recognition can help create that strong positive culture, increase productivity and engagement, and it strengthens your EVP. Now that's your employee value proposition, which is essentially the thing that sets you apart from other organisations. So your EVP essentially helps you to attract the best talent, helps you to retain the best talent to your organisation, and as part of that, it's what you offer in terms of your benefits, rewards, recognition, etc. And of course, it helps you to focus more on long-term goals and ultimately can lead to lower staff turnover. So there are many positive things that focusing on your reward and recognition can lead to make business sense. But obviously you don't want to just take my word for it. So we have done some research and I just wanted to share that with you. So for example, Deloitte have found that recognition in a workplace does positively impact staff turnover. And from their research, they found that staff turnover was shown to reduce by 31% when the staff felt recognised at work. And equally, in a Corn Ferry paper in 2022, they found there were 5 drivers for employee engagement, and 2 of those were about having that sense of worth with effective rewards and having that abundant growth opportunities. And so those 2 clearly link back to that Maslow hierarchy that I talked about. So that's really interesting. And then also we've got the information from a study in 2016 where the Gallup study found engaged teams lead to 21% greater profitability. It found that in their research 17% higher productivity was a result, and there was also 10% higher customer ratings, which all, you know, is amazing for the business. And then furthermore, we've also got 52% of employees reported that having reward and recognition would motivate them to exceed their goals, and 38% would stay with their employer for longer if they had the right reward and recognition. So clearly, reward and recognition plays a massive part in employee retention, employee attraction, and you know, having that highly engaged, productive workforce. So there's a lot of information that I've just sort of gone through in terms of what we mean by it all, some examples, but you know, for those of you that some of you don't have any kind of reward and recognition strategy or people plan, I am now going to sort of focus more about how we go about introducing a reward and recognition strategy. And for those of you that do already have something, then perhaps, you know, what I'm now going to go through may just help perhaps reiterate that what you're doing is absolutely to plan, or if there's anything that you can take just to tweak, you know, hopefully that will help you as well. So let's look about how we introduce a reward and recognition strategy. And I would say there's several things that encompass it, and we will go into detail over the next few slides, but it's around taking into account your organisational considerations, understanding what you're currently doing to offer reward and recognition, what the key components you want the strategy to be, how do you want to approach benchmarking, how do you want to address and deal with special groups in the workforce, such as your directors and senior executives, because as I said earlier, there's a different approach to be taken when you're dealing with people at the very top of organisations. Clearly, budget needs to be important and factored in. And another key one is around communication, not just internally, but also externally. And finally, obviously, a review must form part of any strategy to make sure that it's always fit for purpose. So let me just run through those in a little bit more detail. So if we think about the organisational considerations, your strategy needs to consider both the type of business and the size of the organisation, as well as the range of workers employed, because you might have different aspects to your workplace where you might have office-based staff, you might have some factory workers, you know, there's different groups of workers within your organisation. And so it's understanding your setup so that when you then come on to develop ideas and initiatives that you're targeting as best you can to everyone. And of course it must also be based on your organisation's values and beliefs. It needs to flow from your business strategy but also contribute towards it, and also as well align to the overall people plan. And then making sure that it rewards and recognises results and behaviours that are consistent with organisational goals, values and beliefs. And another aspect to pulling together a strategy is about understanding what you currently do. So what's the current state of reward and recognition in your business? So for example, undertaking a pulse check will be valuable because it helps you find out what your workforce think of the current reward and recognition schemes, and it will help you to create that targeted strategy. And therefore having that targeted approach, it's more likely it's going to be effective and a beneficial strategy or initiatives to have in the workplace, not just in terms of cost, but helping with employee retention and attraction as well. As well as thinking about the organisational needs and things like that, you also need to think about what are the key components to your strategy are going to be. So recognition shouldn't just be about recognising somebody's efforts just once a year, say through the appraisal process, and equally it shouldn't be from just one source either, such as a line manager. So consider how you want to be recognising your employees throughout the year, and as well as from different groups of the workforce, like I've spoken earlier around, you know, getting that feedback from peers, other managers, customers, you know, so there's many different ways in which you can seek that recognition and have that reward. So think about what you want your strategy to comprise of. And remember, reward is both financial and non-financial, and what one person perceives as beneficial, another person may not. So perhaps thinking about flexible benefits perhaps can aid employee motivation and provide that job satisfaction. You know, allowing employees to pick and choose their benefits package to suit their lifestyle at that point in time is very much a targeted way to offer your reward and recognition, and ultimately that can lead to higher job satisfaction as well, because you're giving people what they need and therefore want, compared to when offering just a set package where not all elements may be needed by people. So there's many things to think about, but they're just some things to consider when looking at what your strategy wants to comprise of. And then if we think about benchmarking, you know, that's, you know, how do you compare to what leading employees in your local area offer, and how do you know your own pay and reward is equitable and fair? So benchmarking is a crucial part that underpins the strategy. You know, it's an excellent way of evaluating your organisation's performance and comparing it to others or other areas of the business. Benchmarking can create a better understanding of the current position, so it therefore helps you to establish most appropriate goals and objectives for improvement. and it can help promote best practice as well as encourage innovation. So it's definitely fundamental to any reward strategy, and internal benchmarking is vital because you need to ensure there's equitable pay, as well as ensuring external benchmarking as well, so that you're paying market worth for your employees, and as part of when you're going out into the recruitment market trying to attract. And then also understand what other employers are offering also enables you to offer a reward package that basically is competitive and can attract the best candidates for you. And then if we think about directors and senior executives, I've spoken about how they're a different group of workers. There needs to be a different approach. So think about, what does your overall pay and reward package include? What do you want it to include? So typically the main elements of directors and senior executives are different to the rest of the workforce. More likely to be based and set on the views about the market worth of that particular individual concerned, and remuneration very much includes things such as benefits like share options, bonuses that are not just short-term but long-term bonus schemes for project implementation, etc. So there needs a very different approach and focus. So always make sure they form part of your strategy when you're developing it. And also fundamental is about determining a budget. So the thing I would say is not all forms of recognition and reward are financial, but all will have a cost when introducing. So you may be introducing some non-financial rewards and benefits, but actually there is a cost attached to it through time and effort that it takes for implementation and putting it into practice. So just ensure that you're accurately defining all the expected costs for all areas of the reward and recognition, because it's going to be vital for how effective that strategy then becomes. And then finally is about effective communication. If you think about how you communicate your rewards strategy, how it can positively impact on your recruitment and retention. So if you think you're going out to market trying to attract the best candidates, well, I've talked about the EVP, the employee value proposition. If you're going out there with an excellent summary of everything that you can offer from a total reward package, and a candidate is coming to you, but when they're going to other employers, they're not doing the same, then clearly you're going to stand out, and you've got more power, if you like, to influence and encourage them to take up any offer with you. So communicating your reward package is vital. So not just to internal employees, your existing workforce, but external candidates too. But then when it comes to your internal workforce, reminding people actually how much the organisation contributes and spends and uses to focus on reward and recognition is really a valuable tool. So you have things like total reward statements. They're really key because a lot of companies that offer them issue them every year, and it gives them a summary of what their basic pay is and how much extra they have in terms of all the extra forms of reward and benefits that they get. So using tools like that can be a really simple but effective tool, and reminding people just exactly the true worth that they are to the workplace and how they're recognised. And then finally, like I said earlier, that with anything that you introduce, you should always have it subject to review and update it, because you don't want it to get outdated. You need to be able to retain the best talent, attract the best talent. So if you're having your strategy reviewed annually, or even 18 months or 2 years, then just make sure you build that in, because you always want it to be fit for purpose as well. And then just before we come to a close, I just thought I'd share some examples of how you can integrate a reward and recognition strategy to the business goals, because like I said, the strategy needs to flow into the business strategy, because you need to meet your business goals. So for example, if your business objective is to achieve competitive advantage through technological development, then if you think of a pay and reward policy, then it could be about introducing competency-related pay or skill-based pay, because you're wanting your workforce to perform at their best in regards to technological developments and changes. So therefore, you need your staff to be up to date on those skills. Or if you want to achieve competitive advantage by delivering better value and quality of service to customers, then your pay and reward policy could be about recognising and rewarding individuals and teams for meeting and exceeding those customer service and quality standards. If you want to achieve competitive advantage by developing the capacity of the business to be able to respond quickly and flexibly to new opportunities, and I'd say probably on the back of the pandemic or even during the pandemic, that's been really, really noticeable, isn't it? Because we've all had to adapt our business and rebuild. Then from a pay perspective, then it's about thinking of how can you create a structure where rewards can be given for multi-skilling, job flexibility, and perhaps develop more flexible pay structures. And then finally, achieving added value by improving performance and productivity. Well, that can link into then your performance pay plans and performance management processes. So is there any way that you can improve on those? Or if you don't have anything in place, can you look to introduce something? So it's that targeted pay and reward policy that helps you achieve that added value to improve performance and productivity. So I've got the final poll, and it's just to sort of think back to the first poll we ran. So we're coming up to the question and answers piece, but just wanted to ask again and repeat the question. So if I launch it, so think about the challenges that we flagged in the first poll. So now we've had chance just to sit and think and talk through how pay and reward is important for tackling them. Do you think, which of them would you positively think would be positively impacted by reward and recognition strategy in your workplace? Okay, let's just keep it a bit longer. Okay, let's close the poll and share those results. So 19% of you think that reward and recognition would positively impact on the ability to recruit, 50% for retaining staff, and 31% employee engagement. So that's really good sort of feedback. I don't know if you've got any thoughts, Abby.
Yeah, certainly with the 50% retaining staff,
Yeah.
It just shows you, doesn't it? I mean, the high cost and effort with recruitment.
Yeah.
If you can keep the people that you've got and spent all that time and energy, recruiting and hiring, spend all your time on them, then yeah, absolutely, that's got to be the priority, I would say, especially in current times. And then with the 31% employee engagement, I think that's very much linked to retaining those staff. How do you retain them? Well, we need to make sure they're engaged. So I think that's showing in the figures there.
Yeah, oh good. So hopefully there's been some useful information and insight there into the motivation and how you can lead to that engaged workforce and ultimately high performing workplace. I think next up we've got the questions and answers. So if any of you have put any questions through, well, Abby and I will be happy to help take them.
Yeah, sure. I'll give people a chance just to type a few if they want to. I've been answering them sort of privately as you've gone through your webinar, Victoria.
Okay.
But two that I can raise now, just while people are thinking if they've got any additional questions. One was about the best way of finding out what people think of the current reward and recognition strategy. Is it something that should be communicated or kept within, the senior management team, or by communicating it, does that sort of invite negative feedback that you perhaps may or may not want to hear? My opinion is that it is better to try and gain some feedback, whether that's using a tool, software for engagement surveys. They're particularly good because they ask about all aspects of employment that will probably link into reward and recognition anyway. But if there isn't the budget for that kind of thing, you can still do those pulse checks like you said before. You can do them anonymously, or you can do your own internal questionnaires. Or if people are happy to talk, you can host different sort of coffee mornings, coffee with the boss, or focus groups, whatever it might be, just to get that feel for how people are viewing the business and reward and recognition. Because sometimes if you don't ask, the only thing that employees will see is the advertised profits. Perhaps they'll just look at what cars the bosses are driving, and they'll come to their own conclusions and think, well, I only had a 1% pay rise, but they look like they're able to afford that swanky car over there. So, but that isn't the full picture, and there might be so much more going on in the background that is affecting the reward and recognition strategy for a particular company. So I would say transparency is really good if you can do that. I don't know what you think, Victoria.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And just a thought that's just come up is, you know, for example, exit interviews. If any of you already run exit interviews when people leave, you know, there can be an opportunity there to ask that person that's leaving. I know it's to get their insights as well. Clearly, you want to be doing it before somebody resigns, but it's just another mechanism in which to ascertain that feedback. But I do think getting feedback from your current workforce does give you really valuable insight, and I suppose ultimately by the end of any review, it's going to be perhaps more targeted. Any initiatives or changes that you make are likely to be more targeted because directed at the employees, and therefore they're going to feel it's more effective, and they feel perhaps engaged in the process. So my thoughts there.
Nice. Okay. The other one to go through was, how do we implement a bonus that everyone can equally contribute towards when it is viewed that the sales team are the key people that are bringing in new business? And my initial response to that is, first of all, to set your bonus scheme up, really thinking through whether it's going to be based on company results, whether you're going to do it based on team results, if that's more suitable, or based on the individual, or in fact a combination, and really to expand the recognition of who and how people contribute. You know, your support functions should be viewed equally as important as your operations, as your sales, you know, whatever kind of structure you have. But without the operations people perhaps maintaining, producing or even servicing the new work that's been brought in by a sales or business development team, you know, there would be no business without the support function ensuring operations can do their job. You know, productivity would decrease otherwise. So making sure that everyone knows the worth of their job is crucial, especially within SMEs where you know, there's likely not to be too much fat, should we say. You know, they're quite streamlined in terms of every role is contributing usually. So recognising everyone and having a reward strategy in that case should cement the ability to attract and then retain people, so that you're not having to sit there in that exit interview and hear, well, you know, I've moved on to somewhere else because they've got this great, you know, health scheme, or they look after their people better, or you know, whatever it might be. It's not always about just pay. We've certainly seen that, haven't we, since pandemic, what people are valuing, whether it's the ability to have a hybrid setup, and you know, all that good stuff that you've been through in your earlier slides of all the different elements. And I'm hoping that as people saw, you know, your Maslow triangle working from the bottom up, hopefully people were sort of ticking off in their mind, yes, we do that, yes, we do that, right up to the top with the succession planning element. So hopefully it's been reassuring today.
Yeah, thank you, Abby.
Okay.
Any more questions, or is that?
No, we haven't
No?
any other questions. One of the main things people were asking about were having the slides afterwards, which isn't
Oh
a
yeah,
problem.
yeah. We always, yeah, we'll do that. So let's move on. So that's the webinar, but there's just a few slides just to let you know about other access of free information and support for you. So we're running our annual virtual employment law seminar in March. So just wanted to let you know all about that. So we're going to be sharing with you our thoughts on, what lies ahead for 2023. There's going to be potentially significant employment law developments, and obviously, with all changes from last year, we're going to sort of go through and just let you know how you can move forward in 2023 in a practical way. And it's a couple of hours. You can register if you're knowledge base users. You can register through the knowledge base in the events tab, or if you're not a knowledge base user, then you can obviously go to our website and there's a link there for you. If you feel that there's any training courses that perhaps would support your workplace, then we run many different ones from a people management point of view, as you can see on this slide here. And we do actually run ILM courses levels 3 and 5. You can scan the QR code or go onto our website to find dates for this year, and as you can see here, we are going to be looking at putting more dates on as well. And health and safety, as always, we do like to let you know about what's going on in our health and safety division, and there's a couple of training courses that are running in Feb and March, and then we're also currently looking at getting some further training dates in for this year, that fire safety, food safety, mental health. That's one of our popular courses, as well as safeguarding. So we've got all of that there coming up for this year. For those of you who regularly join me on the webinars, they take place every month, and we have a schedule running up until May, like I said at the start of this webinar. So next month, I'm going to be looking at the 10 key areas for managing people in 2023 and beyond. In March, I'm going to be looking at the 5 considerations employees should make when they're dealing with processing the end of someone's employment. April, we're going back to the good old traditional HR stuff that perhaps we haven't touched on quite like this in a while, and that's your good old return to work interviews following sickness absence. So that's going to be in April. So why do we do them? And then in May, you probably will have heard, but there's the EU law reform bill that has a date of December 2023, where all the EU law, case law including, becomes repealed unless the MPs vote to do anything different. So it's still early days because the bill's going through Parliament, but we're going to be running I'm going to be running the webinar in May with what I know at that point, and sort of talk through potential implications of what that means. And then just one final poll. I did think the other one was the final one, so sorry. This is the final poll, and it's really just to see if there's anything that you'd like us to follow up with you after today's webinar. And it could be anything, our HR services, health safety, the HR knowledge base, payroll or training. So do let us know, and then somebody can get in touch with you and just to follow up more with you on that. So I'll keep the poll open for a little bit. Okay, let's close that. So there we go, my slides weren't moving on then. So that brings me to the end of the webinar. So I just want to thank you all for attending. I know it's a busy start to 2023, so I appreciate everybody taking their time out. And thank you to Abby for supporting and addressing the questions and the polls with me. It's been great having the discussions, and thank you, Drew, for helping people with any technical issues. So with that, I'd like to say goodbye and wish you a very good day. Thank you. Bye.